Hi, I'm Stephanie, this is Texas Peach Knits, and let's catch up. So it's been a little while. I'm happy to be back talking to all of you. My last episode of Texas Peach Knits was in September, and since then I have been very busy knitting to the point that it has gotten a little overwhelming thinking of having a podcast and what to show and how to show it. So today I decided to just rip the band-aid off, and we're going to go through almost all of what I've been working on since September. Now, there is at least one project I can think of that I'm not going to show you today, and that is my Battenberg blanket, and that is because I have not worked on it within the past month or so. I was working on it a lot in November and then kind of set it aside for Christmas knitting and a few other projects that I wanted to get done in a more of a hurry than getting that one done. So I hope you will be okay not seeing that. I'm sure everyone has seen a Battenberg blanket before. I did make some show notes to help me today because it has been a while. I had to remember even how to set up the computer and my camera and everything, because I don't know about you, but I very much compartmentalize the things that go with different jobs that I do, and if I'm not using one of those things, if I'm not doing that, I kind of forget. It goes out of my brain and something else fills its place until I need it again, and then I have to remind myself. And that's probably one of the reasons it's hard to pick up a knitting project that has been sat down for a while, because you kind of have to re-jog your memory and remind yourself not only where you were, but even how you were doing that project. So I'm sure you all understand. Now, if you're new here today, thank you for trying me out. I am just a mom, knitter, wife, mother in Texas. I love to knit, and I love the knitting community. I love meeting other knitters, sharing projects, and interacting. I am pretty active on Instagram, which is where I like to follow lots of people and see what they're up to. One thing I don't do is I am not a trendy knitter in any way. I don't follow trends, I don't buy the most popular yarns, and I don't knit the most popular patterns for the most part. So if you are here trying to see what's popular, you will not be able to find out from me. So you might find something different here from me if you're up for that. I do have other hobbies which occasionally pop into this podcast, but it is primarily a knitting podcast where I just share what I'm working on. I am going to be glancing at my show notes. I have my trusty knitting book here to hopefully remind me of what I am talking about, and we're just going to go for it. So today we are starting with my finished objects, and I thought I only had one. It turns out I have three, so here we go. My first finished object is just a vanilla sock, and I have knit both. I just only have one sock blocker, and this is the West Yorkshire Spinners sock yarn in the Robin colorway. This was given to me as a gift last Christmas by Emily of Wooldenburn. She has a podcast, and we traded our ends of our self-striping yarns, and she sent me this lovely robin, and I decided to incorporate a robin's egg blue heel and toe, since I think I had 40, maybe 40 grams of her leftovers, and I knew I was going to make kind of a shorty sock, but I still wanted to have that cute heel and toe, and I thought the robin's egg blue was appropriate. Now, these are for my feet, which are like a ladies size 9. I did a 64 stitch vanilla sock. I do a little bit longer slip stitch heel because I do have a extremely high instep, so I like to be able to customize how much space I have. And the toe, I believe, is like a crazy sock lady toe, so that is all pretty standard. Now, I did wear these, they're already a little matted or felted on the bottom. I've been loving my hand knit socks this winter. They are so cozy. My next finished object was my Christmas socks, and this is the 3rd year that I have knit myself a pair of Christmas socks during December with the goal of being able to wear them on Christmas Eve. And these look kind of funny because they have cables on them. Kind of blown out, there we go. And the thing that's a little bit different about this year's Christmas socks, let me put it on the sock blocker. The thing that is a little bit different about this year's Christmas socks is I hand spun the yarn, and my little spinning group that I'm a part of on Telegram, we had the goal of spinning for socks, and I was really interested to see if I could spin a self-striping sock yarn. So I bought some fiber from an independent dyer called That Fiber Bish, and it was a 2-color bat. It had red and green with kind of a white in between where they mixed. So I pulled apart, I had two different braids. I pulled apart the colors trying to separate the red and the green, but then anything that was kind of mixed with the white in between, I put into a mixed pile. So I have the green, the mix, and the red. And this is what I have left from those 2 braids that I had. So this is like the red by itself. It's kind of a mauvey red. This is what the mix looked like. And the green, and you can see there's some white in the green, which is fine. But I first of all tried to separate it into, I believe, 5-gram segments of color, and I think this is the skein from that. But the lengths of color were far too long for a sock. Like I would have had like color blocks in the sock, which surprised me because I felt like 5 grams was a pretty small amount. So I ended up switching to 1-gram segments of color, and this is pretty much a 1-gram. So not very much at all. And then I just rotated between the colors in the same order, and I chain plied or Navajo plied the whole thing to keep the colors together. Now, I don't remember which sock was my first sock, but the first sock, see here. I think this one was the first sock. I really didn't do hardly any color management on this sock other than to go back to the green when I got to the instep. So I stopped the red and switched back to the next green so that it would have a solid green across the front. On the second sock, I don't know if I had made a mistake in some of my measurements or if I had just spun it a little bit differently, but I ended up having to manage the color more in this one because I found that my colors were not changing as quickly. So as you can see, I started with green on both of them, but then slowly these are longer to where the red is what went on the instep instead of the green. And that's fine. Like it doesn't bother me at all, but I did want the instep to all be the same, like this last stripe and the instep to be the same color. So I did a little bit, and you can see this green stripe is longer. So, I mean, it's really hard to measure 1 gram. 1 gram, and I think that's the smallest measurement my kitchen scale does, so I probably need a more sensitive scale if I'm going to be measuring 1 gram segments, because you know, you add a little bit on and it goes to 2 grams, and then you take a tiny bit off and it goes back to 1, but it could be 1.5. You know, it's hard to say because it doesn't do a decimal place when you're measuring just 1 gram. So anyways, this was a fun experiment. I am actually planning to spin for socks again this year and try self-striping again. Another friend sent me some braids from her D-stash, and I didn't bring them to show you today because I'll probably include those if I have a state of the stash video. But I'm kind of hoping to do like a 5 or 6 stripe repeat, in which case I might want to do half gram stripes. Sounds crazy, I know, but I don't know, it's just kind of fun. So spinning is fun. I spin on an Ashford Traveler and it's very relaxing, and I've really enjoyed it recently. I usually don't spin in the winter, but I've been bringing my spinning wheel in here. This is our schoolroom, and when my kids are doing their lessons, I have just been spinning lately, and it's been really nice. So I didn't tell you what pattern those socks were. The pattern is from this book, Hand Knit Holidays, and it is by Melanie Falick. She did not design all the patterns in the book. It is a compilation of like holiday inspired patterns. It has a lot of really nice patterns. It also has some strange patterns, but this is one pattern that I've always wanted to try, but it's for DK, so I never really did. But they're called Log Cabin Socks, and I never knit them because I thought they'd be too hot for Texas. This spun up to be about a sport weight, so I thought I would try it with the cables. And honestly, I don't think I would do cables with self-striping again because I don't think it does. I don't think the stripes do the cables justice. It was fun to knit, but when I wear them, I feel like my feet just look bumpy. Like I don't feel like you can see the cables. I just feel like they look bumpy. So I think if I ever spun like a pretty solid neutral yarn, that would probably be a better choice for this pattern. So this calls for a US size 5 needle. I used a size 2, and I am generally a very loose knitter, which will come up again. I don't think I'm a loose, like in my mind, I'm not a loose knitter, but every time I knit things, I think, oh man, my gauge is too big. I am knitting too loose. So I guess I'm relaxed. but I knit them on a size 2 and they turned out to size. I did knit the men's version. The sizes are women's or men's. So I just thought they were kind of like large or extra large, and since I was knitting a slightly thinner yarn on a thinner needle, I went with the largest size. But this pattern is actually by Woodbury, if you're interested in the pattern itself. But it was a good knit. I would knit them again, but I would choose a solid or like a speckled maybe yarn would be pretty. But I think the stripes hid the cables too much. But I still have quite a bit of yarn left, so I might end up knitting myself some fingerless mitts or something like that with the leftovers. I'm really not sure what I want to do with them. My last finished object is in this project bag, which I also made this December, and this is just a very simple lined project bag pattern. I bought the pattern off of Etsy, so I will link it in the show notes. The pattern is like extra small, small, and medium sizes, and this is the medium size, and so this is the largest size unless you do the math to make your bag bigger. But this is just some Christmas fabric that I picked up at a Joann's probably 10 years ago, so about time I used it, and the inside is just, just some fabric I had, so it makes a nice little bag. But my last finished object was fingerless mitts. We have a lovely piano teacher, and on our last lesson before Christmas, I took her 3 skeins of yarn, and I said, this is a very unconventional Christmas present, but I'd like you to pick a skein, pick a color, and let me know if you would like socks, fingerless mitts, or a hat. And so she chose this beautiful color. This is the color Boysonberry by Western Sky Knits. This is one of the skeins of yarn I picked up at the DFW Fiber Fest the first time I went. So it was a long time ago, and I had never used it, so I thought maybe she would like it. She likes jewel tone colors. So I knit these mitts on a size 1 Chiago knitting needle, one of my few of those. And I still haven't sewn in the ends, but this is how they turned out. Now, I don't know if you can tell by looking at them, but I made a very big mistake, and I have chosen not to correct that mistake. So this pattern is by Cisca Travaille. It's a free pattern on Ravelry, and it's called the Wavy Mittens. Did you see my mistake yet? So my mistake is that there is a pattern row where you decrease to make the waves. Decrease and increase, I guess. And then there is a plain row. Well, I don't know what was going on in my head, but I was thinking the plain row meant the opposite side of the mitten, and then all the pattern rows were on the front. But in reality, I was supposed to put a plain row in between every pattern row. So pattern, stockinette, 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 pattern, stockinette, stockinette, stockinette. and I completely skipped those plain rows. And I first noticed because I had finished the number of pattern rows that I was supposed to have, but it wasn't very long. I thought these were supposed to be much further down than they are. So then I just made it longer, thinking it was a gauge problem, but no, I skipped a whole row in between every pattern row. So I went with it. I think they're fine. I asked her if she wanted a long arm, and she said no. So I think this is what she will like. She does have smaller hands than I have. So I think they're going to be fine. But if I make it again, I will add in the plain row and see. And actually one of my daughters and my mother have already requested pairs, and I have this much yarn left because these only use 34 grams made wrong. So I have plenty of yarn to do another set. So Wavy Mittens by Cisca Travaille, and it's a free pattern, so you should try it out. They were pretty fast, and I'm sure I would have enjoyed some plain rows. So they're a little wonky, and I'm considering blocking them, but it is superwash yarn, so I don't know if that would even, I mean, it might help, but I think the real problem is that I'm missing that row. So, but the yarn itself is gorgeous. This Western Sky Knits Boysenberry, absolutely beautiful. So let's talk about works in progress. My first work in progress is a sweater for my 10-year-old son, and he wanted a solid green sweater, and he picked out this Hobby Lobby, I love this yarn, in the dark olive color. I have used Hobby Lobby, I love this yarn, for a sweater before, actually for my younger son, and when you first wear it, it pills a ton, like a nightmare pilling situation. But once you wash it a couple of times and you've worn it a couple of times, it completely stops pilling. It's totally fine. And I know for a fact that my younger son has worn the sweater I knit him every other day, if not every day, for most of this winter so far. And it still looks great. And he's just gonna wear that until there's nothing left in it. And so I actually already had him pick out another set of yarn for me to knit him a new sweater because he's kind of outgrowing it. This is the third winter he has worn that sweater. So I'm knitting the Preston Pullover by Kathryn Folkerth. She is an independent designer that I met years ago before she was famous because we were in a online knitting group together that was for moms of kids that were babies and toddlers. And so we had a fun time chatting about our kids, and she has designed quite a few patterns, not only for women, but for her children. And she has really nice boy patterns because she has boys. This is the Preston Pullover, and it is a bottom-up seamed sweater. And I have knit most of it. It's kind of wonky because I started seaming it, and the sizing, I think, is my fault. But it's for my 10-year-old son. It's going to have a shawl color collar placket in the front. That's why there's this huge hole. But look, it looks like it would fit me. And my 10-year-old tried it on and he said, "Oh, I love it. I love big sweaters. I just love it." So what are you going to do? He'll wear it. I'm not going to rip it out. And I finished one arm. The arms are knit bottom up in the round. I did add 2 inches to the arm from what the pattern said, and I ended up decreasing a little bit of the amount of shoulder shaping, because after I finished the first arm, it did not fit in my hole that I had for the arm. And I don't know if that's because I used acrylic and so I didn't block it out, because I bet if like you had wool and you had blocked this patterned area that it would stretch and then you might have more space to fit in the arm. But it does fit my son, so I'm not worried about having messed up the fit. I just took out 2 rows of the plain from the shoulder shaping. So just a normal sleeve. The front and back are worked flat, and it has this lovely Gainsey pattern. And then, like I said, I'll be adding an inset shawl collar to this. And I actually have almost finished the second sleeve. So here is that. And I was holding them up to each other to make sure I was knitting the same length. And somehow this sleeve ended up 1.5 inches longer than the other sleeve. And I didn't notice until I was this far into the shaping for the shoulder. So now I'm gonna have to tear this out, tear it back to like here, and then start the next part. So I don't know, my brain these days. But I think that my son is going to love wearing this, and it's big enough that it should last him at least 2, maybe 3 years. It's going to be done very soon, so he will wear it this winter and then probably the next 2 winters. So this is the Preston pullover, and I think the size 10 is the biggest size in this. My next work in progress is another sweater. It's a cardigan from this book, Sweet Pickles 27 Adorable Knits for Babies and Toddlers. And this is from the Sweet Pickles yarn store, I think in Norway. And so the owners of the yarn store wrote this book together, and it actually is just a fabulous book of baby items, I feel like. And it has toddler items as well, but I've made this little set. I've made a couple of things out of here, but the pattern I'm working on is a cardigan, and this is the cardigan, and it is sock weight, and it also has a pattern for these like overalls, but I'm only making the cardigan. They have another version of this for toddlers that's made out of a different weight yarn, so this is sock weight, and I am knitting the 3 to 6 month size, but I think my gauge is a little big again. And we'll see. It'll be fine. The baby will be able to wear it at some point. So I'm using Patons Kroy socks. This was a clearance yarn at Hobby Lobby, and this is in the Plum colorway. And the pattern calls for 3 contrasting colored yarns, which you rotate in the stripes, but I decided to use a variegated instead. And this is the Regia Baby Smiles, and it is a colorway number, so it's 01815. And this I already finished. This is a 25 gram skein. I already finished all of the color work portion, and I still have a good amount left. So I might do cuffs in this if I happen to run out of my second skein of Plum. But I've used an entire first skein, and this is the sweater so far. and it has this beautiful woven stitch pattern. It looks like it's just one row of the color, but it's actually two colors in the row, or 2 rows of that color. But it's like a pearl pattern that makes it look kind of like the color is woven in. It was fun to knit, and now I just have the arms, the rest of the bottom, and the collar to put on. And I think the collar is really interesting. Well, not collar, but collar button band. It's interesting because it is knit in combination. That's, do you hear my dog? He's over there walking now. He was sleeping on the floor. He's usually not in here, but it's a little colder today, so he came in. The button band is knit with the bottom band all in one piece. The top collar. Oh. Do you want to go outside? So I guess I'll show you my Benedicta sweater. This is a pattern by Knitty McPurley that I knit a couple of years ago. And the only change I made was I did a split hem and did the back longer. So this is the perfect sweater for Texas because of the short sleeves, but it's still really warm, and I like to wear it with either like high-waisted jeans or over a dress, which I have it over a blue jean dress today. So the button band and the base are all knit in one piece. So that will be interesting to do because I've never done it quite like that before, but we'll see how it goes. So this will be for my goddaughter who was born in October. Okay, next work in progress is my Elizabeth Zimmerman vest for my husband. I am knitting the Stu's vest. So that is Stu's vest in the book. Here was my swatch. This has been washed and blocked, so you can see what the finished yarn looks like. But this is Holst Garn. Holst Garn super soft, so it looks a little airy, I guess, in the knitting, but it fluffs up a lot once you wash it because they leave the some of the lanolin in. But here, let me show you my colors because I haven't shown them in a while. My main color is Truffle. The next main color is Pussy Willow. It's kind of like a soft brown gray brown. And then my contrasting colors are this Larch, which is green, the Vintage Heather, which is like the perfect denim blue. I actually would like a sweater in that, I think. I don't know if it's too dark for me, but the color is beautiful. And Tobacco, which is a brown with red kind of in it. So those are the contrasting colors, and then the pop of color is this yellow maize, golden maize. So my husband is a musician and I have been working on this every time I am sitting in a music lesson with my children. So I usually don't work on it when I have to pay a lot of attention or if I have to like set it down a lot. So I take it with me to these like hour-and-a-half music practices that my children go to. And so this is the Music Fest. And here is where we are. So it is a 3-row repeat or 3-pattern repeat. There's these X's, zigzag, and the X's and O's. And then the color in the background changes the next time. So the X's here are on the light color instead of the dark. And the zigzag, you can barely see it on the darker. And then I'm doing the blue X's and O's on the light. So this is maybe a third of the way up the body to where I would split for the sleeves. I did have to rip the entire thing out and start over because I had done the math based on my gauge swatch and then cast on the number of stitches I needed for my husband. But then after I had gotten to like here, I think, I knew it was just going to be way too big. So I ended up taking out, I want to say like 60 stitches, like an insane amount of stitches. And now I believe it is the right size. So because it will stretch and he wants it to be relatively form-fitting so that he can wear it under a suit jacket and not have it be, you know, folding or bulging or anything like that. So, but I'm really loving how it is turning out. And most of this I did in the fall because I had to rip the whole thing out and start over. So if I get even this much done in the spring, I'll be well on my way. So we'll see. But that is, of course, an Elizabeth Zimmerman pattern, and she says not to follow her pattern exactly. But I pretty much am, so sorry Elizabeth. But I mean, I did do my gauge swatch and pick my own colors and cast on my own number of stitches and all that, so it's not exactly the same. All right, last whip. This is just like a little bag I picked up at a thrift store for $1. It's a great project bag though. And these are my vanilla socks, so I'll just show them quickly. I like to have a pair of pretty simple, not always straight stockinette, but pretty simple socks to take with me when I need something on the go. This is leftovers of my Sense and Sensibility skein from Mystery Mouse Knits that I used last spring to knit socks for a friend of mine. And I love to get 2 pairs of socks out of a special skein of yarn. And so I'm combining it with this Barocco vintage sock that my friend Emily of Woldenburn gave me, and I think it matches Holly's Sense and Sensibility sock colorway just beautifully. So I'm doing the heels, toes, and cuffs out of the vintage sock, and then hopefully I will get 2 full socks out of these leftovers. So size 1 needles, 64 stitches, and yes, extra heel for me, and we're good to go. All right, so that was my last current whip, and I want to share a couple of upcoming projects with you. And also, if you follow me on Instagram, you saw that I'm doing the Make 9 with Amy of Noble Character Crafts, and most of these projects are on my Make 9. And then these two that I'm about to show you are on my Make 9. But I've also tried to organize my thoughts for projects this year into a 25 in 2025 list. And basically, I picked 5 categories of things that I wanted to work on and 5 things in each of those categories. So 5 whips I wanted to finish, 5 projects I wanted to make for myself, 5 gifts I wanted to knit, and 5 spins, like for my spinning wheel that I want to do, and 5 miscellaneous crafts. So those will be sprinkled in throughout the year. I just picked 5 things in each of those 5 categories for 25 total projects. And I mean, I don't take my own list too seriously, but I love a good list. And I really love at the end of the year being able to look back and say, what did I actually complete that I thought I wanted to do? So 2 of the things that I want to cast on for myself, they are both clothing items and they both include handspun. So I shared this handspun last year. It is this like mustard yellow and sunset pink mixture that I made. Looks kind of like baby poop in a good way, maybe. And I purchased at McKinney Knittery some Barocco vintage to complement it. And I was planning to knit a yoked sweater with the handspun as the yoke, and then the Barocco vintage as the body and the sleeves. But I was thinking about how heavy that would be and kind of thinking that maybe I didn't want to knit that. So I started looking for alternate patterns. And one thing that I always use is a cardigan. And I just didn't know how I would want to incorporate the 2 colors in a cardigan because I don't really want stripes. So I decided I was going to try brioche this year. I've never really done brioche. I have done fisherman's rib or half fisherman's rib, which I have been told is similar. But I found this pattern by Drops Design. It's called the Dancing Aurora Jacket. So it's the Drops Design Dancing Aurora Jacket, and it is brioche. So I will be using the Barocco Vintage for where the cream color is. And they had like a color changing kind of thicker yarn as the other color. So I thought my handspun, since it's a little thicker, would work great as the background brioche color. So I'm really interested to see how this turns out. I might get started on it and hate it. I have no idea. But the only way to know is to begin. So that is the first project that I want to cast on this year for myself. The next project I would like to cast on for myself is with this handspun. This is a 3-ply combo spin that I did, where I took 3 different braids, 2 from the same dyer and 1 from a different dyer. And I spun each one very as thin as I could, I guess, as thin as I thought. And then I plied the 3 together in a 3-ply. I did separate the the bats differently. One was very multicolored, and I'll try to share some photos of these as I'm talking about them. One was very like bright multicolored, and I tore that one long ways into 16 skinny strips. I tore it in half all the way down, and then I tore each of those halves into 8. So I was spinning very thin, almost like pencil roving, to be able to get the colors to change very quickly. That was the Duran Dye Works Pullover, and it was not named. The second braid was a created by LCB braid that I got from Caitlin of Hartley's Handmade. We traded some colors, and it was a Targhee bamboo silk blend called Pebble Road, and it was mostly browns and greens and a little bit of purpley grays. And I split that one into 8 long strips, so in half, and then each of those halves I split into 4 so that it would have longer color portions as I went. And then the third braid, I ended up, it was also created by LZB, also given to me or traded with Caitlin, and it was all Targhee and had lots of beautiful purple and pink and green, and it was Targhee and called Fairy Garden. And I split that one long ways into 3, and then I just spun from end to end for those 3. So I ended up with 3 bobbins, the 3 different colorways, and then plied those 3 together in the end. So this is what I ended up with. So it's a very mixed colorway. It will have a little bit of like striping in it, just because the last colorway I split so little, so it has very long color repeats, and it did have drastic color changes. Like you can see there are segments that have a lot of purple and then a lot of the green, a lot of yellow. That's because those sections had a very long color repeat. So it's going to be an interesting knit, because I don't know exactly how the colors will knit up, and that's the exciting thing with Handspun, is you can kind of have an idea of what it's going to do, but you don't really know until you actually knit it. Now the pattern I've chosen for this is also from Drops Design, and it's called the 9610 sleeveless top, and it's actually a vest. It looks like a vest to me, but it has a wide shoulder, so it almost looks like it has a little cap sleeve, and it's a V-neck with just a couple of buttons. And I chose it because it took the right amount of yardage, and it looked like something I would enjoy wearing, and it has a simple stockinette stitch, so I think it will really show off well the Handspun, and it'll just be fun to knit and wear quickly. So that is all that I have to share with you today. I'm glad that you were here watching and catching up with me. Thank you for coming back after my hiatus. I do have all of my numbers for State of the Stash. I did keep track through my break of what I used and what I bought. So if you would be interested in a wrapping up 2024 State of the Stash video, please let me know, because I would be happy to work on that one next. So otherwise, I will see you in February, and hopefully it is easy to not podcast. Like, I can't tell you how easy it is to just watch other people's podcasts and knit. It's so great. And I did miss sharing what I'm working on, but it's very easy to just not do it. But I have been missing it. I do enjoy it, and I'm glad that you're all here with me, and I will see you again in February. Bye.